Everyone, welcome to Served. This is going to be a fun show. Fan Q&A is what we're getting at. Like most things on our show, I will have never heard these questions before. Everyone else on our team knows, similar to when we do our draw breakdowns, and everyone else knows, and I don't. So my stupidity is for your entertainment. Here we go. But first, let's start with Racket Rundown, brought to you by Wilson. On the other side of the rundown, Racket Ron from Wilson, going to get us up to date with what's going on, racket balls, everything else. I have some questions. There's a fan question for him also. But let's get to Racket Rundown, brought to you by Wilson. Some big-ass serving in Basel. I'll just tell you that, with Petchy Perricard and Ben Shelton playing in the final there. We will get more into the weeds on that. Perricard coming out on top. Jack Draper continuing the successes of his semifinal run at the U.S. Open, winning in Vienna over Karen Khachanov. In this time of the year, I always find it interesting because we know who the dominant figures are with this next generation right now, right? Like, we know Sinner, we know Alcaraz. Lots of times in this run in the fall, you kind of get a preview as to who they might be playing in the quarters, semis. Who are the guys that are going to make runs to World Tour finals next year? And this week, between Basel and Vienna split, it was full of them. Perricard, Shelton, Draper, Fees. I promise you, none of them have seen their career high ranking yet. All guys that will probably be around the top 10 next year, in my humble opinion. Specifically with Perricard, the stat that blew my mind, against Shelton, his average second serve speed was 129 miles an hour. I'm guessing that's higher than my average first serve speed for a lot of years, and I could throw it. Like, it's there comes a time when people change the game, and it's not always who is a Grand Slam champion, right? My mind goes to, Connors comes out with the Wilson T2000. Dekker comes in and serves, his way through Wimbledon one year. Rafa comes in, all of a sudden, like, the RPMs change and you see something different. Petchy Perricard is the first guy, and Jim Courier has talked about this at length, especially as it pertains to Zverev when he was struggling with his second serve. Is it statistically responsible to just hit two first serves based on when you make it, your win percentage? If Petchy Perricard just hits two first serves, does he win 60% of his second serve points? I think yes. And I was kind of on the fence. I didn't know. I thought it was easy sometimes. But this guy going 145 first serve, 130 second serve, he was hitting second serves against Shelton in the second set breaker, trying to win a tournament. He went at 142. It's a joke. It's different. Even Isner, who, like, you can't teach 7 feet tall, right? So Isner, Karlovic, they changed the game. Nothing felt the same as returning those guys. They have the best two serves just by virtue of being tall. I'm not saying they're better than Sampras. I'm not saying they're better than Ivanisevic. I'm not saying they're better than Dekker. I'm saying if you gave me one serve in history, I would take John Isner's, because you can't teach 7 feet tall. We're not talking about the rest of the game, which he would tell you is not Sampras. But Perricard, I'm telling you, it was like eye-opening performance this week. Obviously, didn't get broken at all. Won a shitload of tiebreakers. Ben Shelton had a great week. He needed it after dropping the points in Tokyo from his win last year. He was, I think, down at 23. He's going to get back up there. Big things for Ben Shelton next year. We often forget the first time he ever left the country was Australia in what will be 2 years ago, coming in January. He learned, this was on-the-job training by the result of his successes early. He didn't have 2 years in the Challengers. He didn't have this breakthrough. He played at Florida, and then he played on tour. That's kind of it. Played some Challengers and beat Eubanks a bunch that one fall. Big things from Shelton next year. Love what I'm seeing from Jack Draper. Like, rolling people. And a couple of things that is a huge tell is when someone like Draper has the goods, has the weapons, and rolls guys like Demonor, right? And then, like, is beating guys who don't have the weapons, like 2 and 4. That's a statement, right? And then beating Karen Khachanov straight sets in the Vienna final. Great stuff from Draper. Liked what I saw from Arthur Fees. You're starting to see him, play deep at Tokyo, play deep again at Basel. I thought his breakout year was going to be this year. I thought we'd be looking at the top 15, 20 in the rankings, and I thought he would be a participant in that part of the rankings. Not to be this year, but I still like that prediction moving on to next year. Qinwen is on fire, right? Wins this week in Tokyo, finaled Wuhan semis. quarters of the US Open, winning the gold medal, is still 7 in the world, but has created so much space between 7 and 8 and that kind of next little cluster of Emma Navarro plus 3 or 4 on that side. She's not leaving the top 8 for the foreseeable future, right? She is, normally you see results like this where it's win, final, semi in the fall, and someone jumps 3 or 4 spots. She hasn't, but that's just because Pegula made finals in US Open and Coco did well. And it's stacked 1 through 6, but she is kind of separated and she's closer to 6 now than she is to 8, right? She's created a bunch of space there. Looked great. We'll ask Racket Ron from Wilson if she's doing anything differently and if all of her success is not because of her hard work, but basically just because of him. I don't know. We'll see. Props to Sophia Kenin. 80 in the world. And props to Sophia Kenin's agent, because normally when you're 80 in the world, you don't get overseas wildcards into 500 events. So I saw the wildcard next to her name. So props to whoever her agent is. But listen, it's great to see her back. Was near the top of the game in 2022 Grand Slam finals with 1 win that year. Has gone through some stuff away from tennis, back looking like the consistent player that we all know she can be again. So props to Kenin beating Kazatkina and Bolter along the way, and props to Qinwen for getting, all she does is when.
Wow.
DJ Khaled? I mean,
I think it's time to bring Racket Ron in.
We're going to bring Racket Ron in. Racket Ron from Wilson. Racket Ron, I call you Racket Ron, and you're just like the expert on rackets and balls and the such, but like, what is on your business card, what does it say?
Well, that actually is a very good question. I think it depends on the time of year, to be honest. I would say, it's changed a little bit over the years, but really I'm like a global tour performance guy. I work with all of our players just on global players and how well they can play tennis.
Mike, if we don't have cards sent that say global tour performance guy, we have failed.
I mean, that's definitely what we're going to put up in the lower third.
If the font below Racket Ron doesn't say global tour performance guy, we should quit.
We're going to change it right now. It's going to change right now.
We should absolutely find new ways to not make money. Racket Ron, in all seriousness, welcome to the show. It's been great. The content that you've helped us build through my process with 20 years with one racket and switching over to the Wilson shift. I got to be honest, the returns have been real good. Just chopping fools in my dingles game. Unbelievable. All of a sudden the forehand can jump again. Ball stays down, a little bit of love, the late save on the baselines. I have loved it. People have loved the content, taking us through the Wilson String Room at the US Open. If you haven't seen those videos, please check our Serve channel to go back and check those out. The question that I kind of want to start this conversation with is this time of year, right? Players are either playing to make World Tour finals, but there is kind of in every player in the back of their minds, there's an eye towards next year already, right? Next January, what can we do? As Wilson's racket guy, and the difference between Wilson and some other brands is when I was with Babolat, we would have the rackets. I would send it to, a Racket Ron person, and outside of Babolat, they would come back to me. Wilson does everything in-house for their players. So these questions are extremely relevant. You have a Qinwen. She's in full flight. She's probably not going to change much, I'm guessing. But is your inbox full every day with players going, are there new strings? I'm Stefanos. I'm looking to get back into the top 5. Is there any way I can get a little bit more love on my first serve return? I'm on Jabeur. I have the next 6 weeks to get ready for Australia. I'm looking for something different. Are you constantly fielding emails or calls from players, agents, et cetera, kind of looking for those next trends and those suggestions to just get some sort of advantage going into next year?
That's exactly what's happening this time of year. I got to tell you, it's everyone has that question. Is there something out there that may improve my performance a little more? And sometimes they have ideas. They may say, oh, I want to try my racket with a different string pattern. But in most cases, they just look to Wilson and to me just to say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. I might need a little more whatever. And can you give me some samples around that idea? The challenge I think that I really have is, yes, there's so much of the requests coming in, but the off season is so short. Like even the terminology, there is no more off season. It's like preseason now. Like everyone's talking about preseason, and the season isn't even over yet.
Yeah, someone should really fix the calendar. We should talk about that sometime.
Is there something wrong with it?
Fuck me. So you mentioned the trends. What is the split between players knowing what they're looking for and just hoping that you have an answer for them?
I'd say it's about 50-50. Players talk a lot, and they sometimes have some good ideas. Maybe if I try, someone I know on tour who's playing well, maybe if I try their special pattern in my racket, I could get a little edge or something. But again, I think it's 50-50. Sometimes it's just, hey, I'm looking for a little more spin, or I'm looking for a little more power on my serve. What can we do either to my existing racket, or do I need to switch platforms to a different racket to achieve that?
Yeah, and to give our viewers and listeners some context, I can give you my experience, right? Later on in my career, I kind of got caught in the wave of poly strings taking over, and all of a sudden facing that first generation of players who not only would use it, but used it since they were kids, right? So there's a big difference between, my swing path and my little, Bunty Magoo backhand, which was fine with synthetics, but then all of a sudden people taking swings as if they're hitting forehands on their backhand side with the assist from that. So later on in my career, I tried all poly, and it worked great for everything except my serve, which wasn't something that I could trade off, right? I couldn't give up if my serve holds go from, 90 or 92% to 87%, in my mind, it's almost not worth the trade-off, right? So on the heels of that, our listeners, and share what you can, I'm sure they'd be foaming at the mouth to hear the answers to this, but I mean, you've worked with some of the greats of all time. So what is the process like with Roger versus Serena, right? And what are their trade-offs? And does one trust fall, or does one want to kind of go through the nuts and bolts of everything? I know Roger made it kind of some racket adjustments late in his career.
Yeah, I think that really there's a wide spectrum here. I think, working with Roger, the idea that, he's really into his equipment, very sensitive to his equipment, but also didn't want to understand necessarily the why, but just what the result was. I need this, help me get it. And I don't want to go too deep into the engineering of how it happened, but either I can feel it or I can't. Serena's a rare athlete. She could feel some of the smallest differences in equipment, but she was also the most open-minded. And this is something that a lot of people don't know about Serena. So for most of her career, we had a standing date, an engagement, that I would go down to her house in Florida in the first week of December. And her instructions were, bring me anything you want me to hit. I'll try anything. And then I'm going to decide what I'm going to play next year. And there were some times at that point in her career, that year, whatever, she felt she needed more help or more control, she would switch rackets. And that was really not the norm for a top player.
Yeah, the only other person I can think of who has that reputation for tinker, and it does take a certain amount of talent to have confidence. Like, I can switch rackets this week and win next week. I certainly didn't have that. That would have caused me stress that I couldn't afford to give the world at that point. But the interesting part to me, and we discussed it, we kind of set the table for this discussion, was the December 1st standing date. How many different options are you taking her? Is it 10 or is it 2?
It's probably between 8 and 10.
Wow. Wait,
Yeah.
wait, sorry. So like I'm fully into this shit now. So when that happens, is it string patterns? So the string patterns dense, wider? Is it strings? Is it length of racket? Is it as extreme as length of racket, or is it just a thinner model, a thicker model, string tension, maybe some patterns, combos of all of those things? What was your thought process when going down there?
So the answer is all the above. Like we would take a look, and I would really be engaged with her coaching staff and her team. and get feedback throughout the year, what she's feeling, what they think she needs. And one of the things that she would really do is just allow me to sort of freeform some solutions. So not too dissimilar from the playtest that you went through. There were times in Florida we would hit different models of rackets.
Except she can hit backhand. Walk through the different models. Continue that thought without me talking about how shitty I am.
So, certainly she's always played an extended length, but when I would give her something to try that might have been a little more powerful, so to transport that to your playtest, like the Ultra, for example, thicker beam, more powerful racket, I would decrease the length a little to compensate because I still wanted her to get the court, hit the ball in the court. This is not a back fence exercise for the day. So it was just a combination. How do you get the right string pattern, the right types of strings in the right racket for sort of that moment or that period of her career? And again, she's one of the players that she kind of switched, all over the place as far as beam thickness. She used to play some pretty thick beams and she ended up her career in a fairly thin beam. But again, it's that magic combination of racket, string pattern, and length for her that she would adjust to and adapt to super quickly and then get the results she was looking for.
I'm surprised because instinct tells me that's like, I would look at how do I improve backhands? How do I make more returns? Right. That was the kind of an entire thing. It's like I can handle most things on the forehand side. I can handle most things on the serve. You mentioned like giving her more power. I'm surprised that that's something that she would pursue, or that you would have the gumption to actually suggest that power was something that Serena Williams needed.
Well, this came from her. She told me pretty early on.
That's surprising.
And this, I'll never forget this because it was such a quote that you never hear from a player. She said to me, if you give me a racket with all the power in the world, I'll learn to control it. And it floored me because I was like, I've never heard that before. But it was true. I would walk her up the power scale. She, as an athlete, could adapt. And looking at how she played the game, that power was such an integral part of how she played, just like your serve to you was such the key moment of everything you did, that her power had to be big. No matter what we were giving her, she had to start with that big power game.
Unbelievable. That's like I think I've been silent on this show like twice ever. That one of it. Just give me all the power. I'll figure it out. Like, God,
yeah,
that's
what she
like
said.
a very.
Now, I did put like, a traditional, really thin beam, low powered racket in her hand. And in about 7 minutes, she adapted to it. She didn't miss a ball for probably a half hour, but she hated it. She's like, I can't hit through the court. I can't hit that opening before my opponent gets there. It's just the ball's not going. I'm like, yeah, but you didn't miss a ball in 30 minutes. She goes, it's not for me.
I just like, I'm like, if I miss one, I'm like, nope, done. That's it. Insecurity strikes. How surface dependent were her preferences?
From a racket perspective or from a playing perspective?
No, I mean, I know she's good on grass and fast stuff and like, but from a racket perspective.
She would really tune her game in the racket to basically hard courts. And then she would achieve some performance variations on the clay with string tension. She felt like if she got used to the racket, she could make some of those minor adjustments in the tension of the strings and get a little more when she needed on clay. But she was really tuned in onto the hard court setup.
And quickly juxtapose that process where you're taking her 10 frames versus Roger. I'm guessing it's less, maybe 2, because he was just basically looking for a bigger, rounder head where he could take more cuts on the backhand side. Is that a lazy analysis that's somewhere in the ballpark of being true?
Definitely being true. With someone like Roger, much more precise with his equipment, the sandbox to play in was smaller. We could try some things, but it wasn't going to be radically different. And, looking back on my career, there's no one that's been like Serena as far as that ability to just go all over the map and look for things. Like, it's usually a more contained area. But Roger was, I think, what struck me with him is that he was always thinking like way ahead. he was never looking for a racket to play next year. He was looking for the racket he might need in 2 or 3 years. So every time he switched, that process started at least 2 years before he switched.
I get so jealous of the way that a certain level of talent can think. I'm like, God, I just want to get through my first round at San Jose in 4 days. Can you give me something for that? So looking forward to next year, just a general kind of overview. But what are trends that you see happening in 2025, both at the pro level and for all of us chuckers on this podcast?
On the tour level, there's a continued reduction of handle size.
Interesting.
So more and more players are going to smaller handle sizes. And I think that's directly related to certainly the modern game and how the swing of the modern game is much more nuanced than it's been in the past. I'm getting my wrist to roll over or under. Like I got these subtle wrist movements now, especially right before impact. I need to adjust, a micro adjust, we call it. That smaller handle allows you to do that. So this room I'm in, which has all the player rackets, 10 years ago, there were a ton of 4.5 and 4 5/8 on the wall. Now there's hardly any.
So that's in direct reaction to the strings being able to hold the ball longer, being able to manipulate the ball at the last second. So they're basically trying to lever that as much as possible for like kind of that late adjustment manipulation situation, right?
Correct. And we see it pretty much across the board, men and women. This is happening.
That's crazy. I've asked. I could sit here and ask you questions for an hour, but eventually we're gonna have to get to a fan Q&A because it is a fan Q&A show. Producer Mike, what do we got?
Hey Ron, how are you, man?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. So Basel wrote into us the other day and said, I have a sledgehammer that's been sitting in my tennis bag for 20 years while I took a break from tennis. I recently started playing a lot again, and I still love my racket. Has technology changed, or has the racket aged so much that I'm doing myself a disservice by not getting a new one?
Great question. So the racket technology has changed a lot since then. That sledgehammer racket is a ultra lightweight, very head heavy, very powerful frame. So that means you can take, some would call a bunt at the ball, maybe an Andy Roddick backhand at the ball, and it's going to go. So if he's getting back to tennis and the racket is still performing for him, good for you. Keep playing it. But I would encourage him to look at some of the newer technologies because modern rackets provide an easier access to power, more spin rates, and sometimes a lot easier just to swing through the air. So yes, technology has leapt forward since then.
So I have one question back to Basel. Hopefully they can write in, but what constitutes just quitting? Like I quit 20 years ago. Like I don't, it's 20
Took a break. Took a break.
We were on a break. Is 20 years a break or did you just quit and then decide to play again? And is there a difference?
Sounds like you need to start fresh.
A 20-year break. I'm just saying.
And the
second thing is Ron said it in a way better way, in a classier way. Okay. So what we need to do, is it Basel?
I don't know. Basel. I don't know. BASIL.
We have a pro operation.
One or two.
Very pro operation here. Basel. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to get all of your friends and family together, right? Okay. I'll wait. Okay, so now when you've done that, I want you to get a shovel and go dig a hole in the ground, right? We're having a funeral for your racket. But then what's going to happen is if you write into Mike and you can tell us that you actually had a funeral for your racket, we'll send you a new Wilson shift. I don't even know if that's approved by Wilson, but we'll make it happen.
Yeah.
I'll make it happen. Evidence. If I get a photo of the burial,
yes, that's what we need. It's a fair request, right?
I want a full video. I need a full funeral service.
I didn't think this show was, when we started the show 20 minutes ago, I didn't think it was going to get to the point where we were requesting pictures from funerals from listeners.
Just of the racket, though. I don't need a It needs to be open casket though. We need to see that the racket's in there.
A casket?
I don't know. Whatever they want to put it in.
I feel like whatever they just gained in shift is offset by having to buy a casket. I'm not sure that.
I need the commitment.
I think I just need a hole in the ground and maybe a grip stick. I don't know. Let's be creative. But we will send you a Wilson shift. Racket Ron, golden information as always. We appreciate you coming on. That was Racket Rundown by Wilson. This is Racket Ron with Wilson. It's just a Wilson fest, but appreciate the stories. The Serena Fed stuff was gold. We'll get you on again soon. Thanks, man.
Hey, great. Thank you.
Cheers. And we will be right back after the break on Served. Producer Mike.
Yes.
Did you learn something from Racket Ron? That was pretty cool.
It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, I was into it.
I mean, I can't understand the fact that Serena can play with any racket she wants whenever she wants and get a feel for it. But then Roger can be like, I'm going to play with that in 2 years.
I think I
don't even know what I'm having for lunch tomorrow.
It's just so my jealousy is just knows no bounds when I hear their process with rackets. Mine goes to 3 good, 1 squirrely. Oh shit. And they're like, give me all of the power. Let me figure out how to control it with my superpowers. And Roger's like, I need this or that. Thank you. And we're going to put this into play. It's like an index fund. It's really going to hit its stride in 2 years. Fucking hell. Anyways, so we got Jon Wertheim joining us as always, our partner in crime. Mike, how's this going to work? Fan Q&A. How the hell is this going to go? I don't know anything about it.
Well, generally the way a fan Q&A works is they send in a question and then you guys answer it.
Okay.
So low bar.
Okay.
It's been done before. So
yeah. Okay, great.
Or no originality in entertainment.
Perfect. Boca Preparatory High School really did a great job. Anyways, go ahead.
All right. So the way to work, these are questions that work for both you guys.
Yep.
So feel free to ping pong. Feel free to give both your thoughts.
Okay.
First question is topical. It's Draper and Perricard had big years in 2024. They both won this past weekend. Do you see them as major contenders in 2025? And what does the transition in training / strategy look like from trying to jump in the rankings to now having to stay at the top?
There's such a difference. Perricard went from 200 in the world to 31 currently, and now we're talking about him winning majors. Let's take a second. Draper, a little bit more of a process, was up, then he went down, and now he's kind of back up. Draper, you've heard me on air, and I think he would probably tell you, we saw it a little bit at the US Open also when he had the old vomit Magoo. The difference in training is making sure that your body you have to be prepared at a slam. So to get to this major contention that the question led with, your body, it's not going to go the distance every time. Your body has to be able and be prepared to play 5 hours, 7 times, 14 days. In heat, in weather. Draper sweats like I did. It's just disgusting, right? We're both gross, sweaty individuals. He's going to have to find his stride on what the food looks like, being prepared physically. Does that mean he's training in London? Is there another base where he gets into heat? My personal experience was I would get my body ready, doing sprints, lifting, doing the whole thing for a month straight in Austin. Every day, 6 days, 6 days a week, 7-day rest, up at 6 a.m, falling into bed at 9 p.m., rinse, repeat, being perfect with diet. My body's ready. We would stop in Hawaii on the way to Australia to get used to time zones, but I would literally play on this court in Hawaii that was made of lava rocks and would just cook myself for 2 weeks to get used. So all of a sudden I get to Australia and the heat is still very real, but it's not something that I'm feeling for the first time. So that is the leap. Right? From, okay, I can not do that stuff and I can make a 4th round of a Grand Slam, maybe. To give myself a chance, you have to tick all those boxes because I promise you Sinner is, I promise you Alcaraz is, right? Draper is more body. I think Perricard is not going to play those long points. He's not going to get dragged into it. When your average second serve speed is 130, this guy is just a complete... he's just so different. I mean, his is going to be more skill-based, right? Can I make 10% more returns? When I rip, can I rip it to bigger spots? Am I effective if I hit that little flat side swipe backhand that he hits, flat middle? So him is going to be a lot more what works, what doesn't in the actual matches. And I think Draper's is going to be a lot more physical body work, no box left unchecked.
I kind of love this question, though. I'm guessing one reason we're getting it is obviously these are two guys that won titles this past weekend. They're very close in age, and yet can you name me two players that are more different? It's kind of a great advertisement for tennis, right? You've got, and also, I mean, these are two, you said it, I mean, these are two guys as close as they are in age at different fate. They're almost different generations, you could make the case, as close as they are in age. I mean, you know, Draper's played he's played his matches. He's been to the semi of the U.S. Open and played Yannick Sinner on a big court in a big match. We all love Perricard. He's still learning how to play tennis, and that is by his own admission. I mean, he even said, I mean, I sort of jokingly at Wimbledon called him tennis Wemby. Like, he's still figuring out his body. He's still like, you know, the bird that's like scratching its way out of the eggshell. I mean, he's still figuring out what this whole thing is about. It's pretty awesome when you can serve 130 miles an hour. I feel like, you know, that probability exercise when people are like, I don't understand. Why don't guys just serve two first serves? Why didn't John Isner spend his whole career serving two first? This guy comes, the answer, of course, is, by the way, it's not statistically advisable. I mean, it sounds good in theory, but this guy comes pretty close to, not much of a dip from first to second serve when you're doing 130 on your second ball. But no, I mean, I think long range, Perricard has a lot more work to do. I think Draper's, the game is there. He's a lefty. He's good size. He's really got to work on the, not just the fitness component, but just kind of organizing a match. He's still a little immature, I think. I think, who knows? I mean, you know, when you're 6'8" and you're still figuring out how to play tennis and you're going to be seated at the next major and you can serve 130 miles an hour on a second serve like it's nothing, he's a Wimbledon contender if he doesn't win another point from now until July. But I think Draper is much more advanced at this stage. I mean, it's really almost two different generations, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yes and no. I mean, so one of the things I got to give credit where credit's due, Draper's backhand over the course of this year is one of the most improved shots in tennis, right? We would have had this conversation a year ago. I would have called Yahtzee on it, right? I would have said body, the backhand, him being able to basically hit it firmly to big spaces is a revelation, right? The fact that you can't just choose that side and say, okay, he's going to either knock me out or knock himself out, right? Asking the question over and over and over. Now, it's weird because Perricard is still going to lose second round sometimes because he's going to play people who he's not going to go out and break someone 6 times in a match yet, right? So it is that Isner thing where no one wants to play Isner if you're a top guy because you can't break him, but he also might not get to the 4th round matchup where you have to worry about him, right? Where Draper, I think, is more complete. He's going to beat people that he should on a more regular basis. Perricard, when he goes outside, all of a sudden he's got to deal with sun. He's got to deal with wind, which affects his cash grab, right? He is built around the serve, and this is coming from someone who is built around their serve. So lots to see, but listen, one thing that is you can't argue is the fact that we have some really exciting guys. And John, I framed it in Racket Rundown earlier, was I feel like we're getting a preview with Draper, Perricard, but also Shelton, Feast, et cetera, this fall of the guys that might play the top guys, right? The Alcaraz Center in like a quarters or a semis in a slam moving forward. Am I ready to make the leap from winning Vienna and winning Basel to winning the French Open? I'm not, but I like the question. These guys are very, very exciting. Both have big weapons. Perricard can just take the racket out of your hand. Like you're almost at the mercy of his strike zone some days. If he's throwing strikes, you're not going to get a lot of hits, but maybe you can grind out a single, maybe walk. But we'll see. This is it's exciting stuff anyways.
Yeah, I mean, that serve that bounced off Sheldon's hand was just it was crazy.
But you can't, like, right. John, the way I put it is in Racket Rundown is he served 129 on average for a second serve. He's the first guy, to your point that you made without hearing my Racket Rundown, is I think this is the first one where it's a real conversation where it is statistically responsible to hit 2 first serves. Is he going to win 60% of his points if he hits 2 first serves? I mean, he's going to lose like 7% of points if he makes it. And he's serving at a 70+% first serve clip.
You said this before about other guys. Well,
I thought Jim Courier did a full statistical analysis, but it was based on when Zverev had yips, right? If he's not making second serve, if he's doubling 12 times per match, which he doesn't anymore. He lowered his toss 1.5 feet. He made that adjustment, but someone's going to do it. Like, it is going to happen. Like, someone's going to pitch and hit in the same game, Ohtani. Like, someone's going to do it, right? And I think this is the guy that's going to do it. He's going to change something in what we think the rules are in tennis. He's the guy to do it. Now, there's a lot of work to do on the other parts of his game, but it's going to be fun to watch because he's going to flip some stuff. And I promise you, if you're Alcaraz or Sinner, you'd rather play someone ranked a lot higher who's going to give you a rhythm where you can control what's going on than this Perricard guy where you're at deuce and you don't know if he's going to hit a 140 second serve.
Right.
You can't control that.
Can I, you want a quick, I mean, I think some other time we'll do a whole statistical deep dive because it's actually really interesting about why historically it hasn't been advisable to hit 2 first serves, but this guy blows that model out of the water because part of the thinking is the data gets dirty because the returner ends up anticipating 2 first serves and you sort of don't get the changeup, you don't get the curveball. With him, when you're serving 131 up the tee on your second serve, even if you double, I think he double faults like 6-7% of the time. Even if you double fault 15% of the time, even if his double fault's double, it's still probably the statistically smart play when you can do 131 and put it anywhere. But we interviewed Perricard at Wimbledon. He's a really nice kid. And at one point during the interview, he's talking about roller coasters and he's giggling and he's looking at the wrong camera. And I think he didn't realize the interview was over and he kept going and he kept talking. And then at some point we had to say, we're done. You can leave now. And my point, I mean, he's a really likable guy. This is not some sort of cocky kid who says like, move over, there's a new sheriff in town. Like he's kind of a goofball too and sort of admits all the weaknesses in his game and he needs to get in better shape. And I think there's something to him growing into this. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done. That is not by any stretch a finished product. And I think it's going to be really exciting to see, okay, the serve is there. I mean, this is a Wimbledon winning caliber serve today. Will he shore up his movement and his fitness and his volley? I mean, his volleys aren't for a guy that serves that well. You'd think he'd volley a little better. But it's really fun to watch. And I also just love what a change agent he is. I mean, the conversation about him, it's not going to be like Karlovic. It's not even going to be like Isner. I mean, this guy's going to have a completely different sector unto himself for tennis discussions.
Well, the other thing is like Isner and Karlovic, and then we'll move on to the next question because we're only one question in, is they had massive kickers. Like their second serves there was value in it jumping over your head. He goes big on the second serve because he doesn't have that natural like jump over your face kick, right? So the option is I'm going to go through you, which is endlessly entertaining for the rest of us. Mike, give us question number 2.
Question number 2 comes from Ellen. She says, why is tennis the only sport that messes up draws, i.e. Sinner 1, Medvedev 5? This seems to go against all logic and seeding in any sport.
No, it's literally the most democratic process with seeding. One shouldn't play 8 every time. You shouldn't know who you're playing potentially in the draw a week in advance. You just shouldn't. That's no fun. It kind of stinks. So what happens is Sinner has the same statistical chance of playing Medvedev at 5 or number 8, whoever that is. It's literally 1 gets slotted, 2 gets slotted, 3 gets coin flipped, I think up top and up bottom, and then 5 through 8, same thing. Yeah, like it's going to end up somewhere. The draw is everything. I mean, if you hear our preview shows, when I lose my mind when some part of the draw shakes out a certain way. And the other thing is there's not going to be a lot of movement between Roland Garros and Wimbledon. Maybe someone flips a spot if someone wins, but you're not going to get that variance. You don't want the same draw over and over again and in successive weeks. Like you want that element of surprise. And also it's kind of fun. Like we had it at this year's US Open. It's kind of fun when a side of the draw completely gets blown open and you get a real feel for who's going to step up to the moment and actually deliver. This year it was Taylor Fritz, right? That opened up. You knew one of 4 guys was going to be in a US Open final. A lot of them hadn't even been past the quarters, including Fritz at that point. So I understand your question, but also in tennis, it's not the same as slotting in based on record in an NFL playoff where you're a team. It's not likely to be the same number 1 seed, number 4 seed year to year, but much less if it's 2 weeks later, major to major.
Only thing I think you're absolutely right. The only thing I would add too is just to be clear, it's not random either. 1's on the top, 2's on the bottom, 3 and 4 on opposite sides of the draw. So it's really not as arbitrary as people think. But I think you're right. The real reason they do this is so we don't have repeating rival. We don't have the same repeat matches if the rankings don't move. But good question, but not for all that Ailes tennis, this would not make the list.
I agree. But Ellen, please don't stop listening to Served.
No, it's a good question.
No, it's a great question. I actually, when I read it, I was like, oh, that is pretty interesting, but completely see what you guys are saying, especially after the Rafa stuff with the French Open, right? It's just, I honestly think that created more buzz for the opening rounds, and I actually think it benefited the opening rounds.
Always. But Ellen, one thing I can tell you with confidence is that Olipop's delicious.
Oh, what flavor you got there?
Cream soda.
Oh, a little cream soda.
A little creamy, some little pop. Little pippity pop.
Little pip pop.
All right, what do we got?
Cool. Let's pop into the next question.
Let's do it. Oh, nice one.
Nice. Thank you.
Natural on-air talent. Look at this guy.
Next one came from Instagram from Maricado616. Were there any lesser-known players on tour that had unique or unorthodox technique or shots that weren't really talked about that much when you played?
Yeah, totally. So tennis at a certain level is all matchups. The name that just launches off of my brain, and there's a half a chance that Wertheim is thinking the same person.
Should I guess it?
You guess it. I'm going to write it down. Okay, don't guess it yet. Go.
Is the diminutive Frenchman, the magician Fabrice Santoro, too obvious?
Fabrice Santoro is the answer. That is written
I've never
down.
worked with this man.
Yeah, so
telepathic.
So to your point, Fabrice couldn't have been more than 5'9". Fine serve, little bunny kick, but would serve and volley half the time. And when he wasn't serving and volleying, he was doing kind of nothing that was aggressive, right? He had this little chop, two-handed. So he has two hands on each side, which is weird. Just at face value it doesn't even really exist anymore. It was a little more prominent in the days of, Celis and Byron Black and Fabrice Santoro and Jan-Michael Gamble. But had this little chop forehand. Like it was, and he almost finished with his left hand instead of his right. Like he's right-handed, but his left hand would kind of fly off the racket, and he would moonball. He basically played like an adult version of what you see a lot of successful 11-year-olds do, but he had the tennis IQ and the speed to match, right? So he would drive, like Marat Safin is built like a god, right? If you had to create like a prototype of a tennis player, you start at like 6'4". I can run. I have skinny legs. I can beat you off both sides with power. I can serve 135, and that's Safin. Santoro, 5'9", couldn't really break an egg off of either side, and would absolutely drive Safin batshit crazy. Like would just lose his shit against Santoro. Caro Kuchera is another one that would just throw in like random moon balls. Had Andre tapping out on grandstand one time, would catch his toss 17 times, just played, yes, but those like awkward matchups, and it all becomes matchups. I didn't mind playing Santoro. I think I lost to him once and beat him a bunch. Drove Safin nuts, even when he was number one in the world.
There's a lot of quirk out there, right? Max Cressy, serve and volleying, committed to serve and volleying. I don't know how much the player's success is honestly because of the quirk and how much sometimes maybe in spite of it. I mean, no one played like Monica Seles. I mean, here's a legend who took the ball so early, wouldn't hit two hands on both sides. It's one of the things that makes tennis fun. But I think with some of these quirky, funky shots, sometimes, well, you tell me. I mean, you were on the other side of the net. I mean, sometimes I think it's fun for the fans, but sometimes maybe the quirk was an impediment and not a value add.
Well,
what do you think?
I'll give you an example. So in 2000, I was number one in the world in juniors. I kind of got a bunch of wild cards into tournaments that summer. So I was 17 years old, playing Cincinnati, get a wild card into Cincinnati. And I played this Italian guy who's a lefty who kind of just poked the ball around. And it was no junior at that time. I'd gone from playing 17-year-olds to playing a 32-year-old who had been a gristled veteran on tour named Gianluca Pazzi. And awkward little lefty, serve kind of square. I'm like, this guy, we're
discount Rack McEnroe.
We're playing in warm up, and I'm going, oh, I can obviously, guy chopped me, put the ball in spaces I didn't miss, little can opener serve. I lose 6-1. I then go to Leg Mason the next week, and I play Adrian Voinea first round, who was another guy who kind of had a little pokey one-hander. Voinea into Santoro. And then into Caro Kuchera, I'm going, does anyone hit the ball hard on tour? Like, or am I just gonna get drilled by these? So I end up going through those guys. And then I found the answer to my question. I played Andre Agassi, and I realized two things simultaneously. Okay, this isn't what I've been experiencing, isn't reality. There are guys that would just blow the doors off. And also there's a reason why Andre Agassi would never lose to Gianluca Pazzi.
That was good. That was a great question. I enjoyed that. Next one comes from Victor, and this is a good doubles question, guys, so strap in. Would changing the scoring for doubles matches to essentially the way table tennis matches are scored help revitalize doubles, i.e. best out of 5 match tiebreakers for regular tournaments, best out of 7 for major tournaments?
John?
Ooh. The question is sort of a damning indictment in itself of
careful.
We're all trying to look even-handedly at doubles. I'm not sure the scoring is the improvement. So many things have been tried, from ranking cutoff to shortening matches to no ad. I'm not sure scoring's going to be the injection of vitality that doubles so sorely needs. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think it's marketing. I don't think it's score. I think we're trying to find a way to put Band-Aid on something that needs surgery. Frankly speaking, I think Stacey Alistair had the best proposal I've heard yet. Let the space create itself from the singles draw. So where you're not competing against the first round of singles, the second round of singles, if the double starts, is it the last 10 days of a major where all of a sudden you're carving out really interesting matchups, specific players? You're going to get more singles players who have had a disappointing result in singles that want to get into the doubles. But taking something that people have largely chosen not to watch, and this isn't my opinion, this is just based on ratings. And some people say, well, it's not on. Well, it's been around 40 years. The market speaks to you over that amount of time. It's not as if people haven't had the chance to do it. And I promise you, there aren't a lot of TV networks that leave something that is extremely wanted, viable, and not choose to use it for revenue. That's not a choice that any network ever makes. I don't think switching up the scoring system and then, so basically adding a layer of viewer education to something that isn't quite working the way that we all want it to is the solution. So I don't think you take something that is tough with scheduling and a lot of other things, and then basically force people to spend, minutes learning and educating themselves when they could flip it over. I don't know if that's the fix. But hey, listen, nothing would make me happier than for some fix to exist and for it to not be something that we have to address or try to fix all the time.
All right, next question from Steven. This one is one I actually didn't really know about and I had to look up. What is your experience playing on carpet courts before the surface was dropped off of tour? And do you think it'll ever make a comeback?
It will not make a comeback because it's you trip on a seam, and it was also like a very fast court thing when everyone was used to playing fast. So if you put a carpet court down off of what they're playing on tour now, you might as well be playing on an ice hockey rink. Like it was a cheap solution to host tournaments back in the day. I will tell you my experience with carpet court, like it was gone before I really played, but they had 2 across the street at the kind of annex building from the All England Club. And it was old kind of dusty building. It doesn't exist now. By the way, I went to this side tangent. I went to the All England Club just as a fan and went there, and I hadn't been there in years. What they've done with the indoor center and the practice facility is might be the best facility on earth. It is unbelievable. But I digress. I only thought of that because my dear carpet courts don't exist anymore. I used to go over and to actually get a little bit of a rhythm, but also have a ball that kind of slid through the court. They had these old carpet courts, and I would go there on off days. And so I would go get a groove for 30 minutes because on grass, a lot of the matches, you don't get into extended rallies. Sometimes you're not getting a rhythm like you do on off days. So I'd go hit on the carpet for 30 or 45 minutes and then go play a set in practice, right? So I would use the carpet to just kind of maintain rhythm. And that was awesome. So my best experiences with carpet court are kind of using it for a certain purpose on the grass and at Wimbledon. John?
a lot to add to the carpet discussion. I think I always say indoor carpet. I always think it's like hilariously redundant. Like you're not a lot of outdoor carpets going on. I think you're right. I mean, it's such a fast surface, and I think it's done on the cheap. I mean, I think one of the issues that you hear, even with just general indoor, is it a little weird to have events played on surfaces on which we have no majors? Like, why would we play on a surface that doesn't exist except in this small format? But I don't think there are no more carpet events, right? I mean, it's an obsolete surface. I don't know if we can make a lot of jokes. Is Stanley Steamer on the changeovers, but no, I think it's a slick, fast. Can you imagine going back to what we said before? You imagine our friend Mr. Perricard on a carpet, indoor carpet.
Well, that'd be. I think I'd rather get kicked in the nuts than play him on a carpet court. I don't know if you might
not be a choice. You might
get hit in it. If
you played him on carpet, you may have the same. Anyway, let's point out at this. You and I did not. We did not know these questions in advance.
No.
So we're getting a little blindsided here. It's all good.
Speak for yourself. I feel very comfortable.
This is what the people want to know.
You knew carpet was coming. All right.
Yeah, this. Welcome to me every draw show, JW. What do you got next, producer Mike?
All right, so this one's from Diva, but she had asked.
Diva?
That's what it says.
Yes.
But she had said if you could invite any 3 people, alive or not, to a dinner party, who would it be? But I wanted to flip it on its ear a little bit. If you wanted to invite any 3 players, alive or not, to play dingles with you, who would you want it to be? Diva, great question, but I wanted to take a little bit further. And John, I think your input is who you'd like to see play. But I think, Andy, who would you want to play with?
John, you go first because I need some time.
Wait, so who would I like to see Andy play dingles?
No,
with?
just like a dingle. Name your dingle. Like, do you know the game Dingles? No, you don't.
Yeah. We've you've given.
I know, but
given our audience.
So I mentioned it a bunch, and it's all I do. I did it this morning for 2.5 hours. So basically, start a cross court point. The 4 people on a court. Each plays cross court a point. Eventually, that point is won by someone. Whoever wins that point yells dingles, and then instantly opens up to all 4. So you could be in a terrible position based on when it opens up. Someone, all of a sudden, it opens up, and someone could have an overhead, and you're 4 feet away. Like it's just psychotic. But it is awesome. It is fun. I need some time to think about this, John. Who would you like to see play this game of chaos? It's not going to be someone who just makes balls. It's going to be like my mind is like I'm in the Alcaraz, Federer, McEnroe kind of where they're creating crazy shots, crossing, kind of that whole thing. But I need some time before I commit to this. This is a very precious question to me.
Let's see. I'll say Fabrice Santoro, Gianluca Pazzi, and Carol Kuchera. No, honestly, let's we haven't spoken a lot about women in the last half hour. Let's limit this to WTA players. I will watch anything Aryna Sabalenka does because her combination of power and unpredictability makes her a great watch no matter what. How about, remember Emily Loire? Anyone with tie? Ons Jabeur. Right, let's say Ons Jabeur, Aryna Sabalenka, and Coco playing dingles. And I'm paying big bucks for those tickets. How's that?
That's good.
Stall long enough to let you gather your thoughts?
Kind of. Well, this is just going to be an ongoing thing. I'm just going to kind of walk through my thought process. The one non-negotiable, I'm going women first also, but not just to current players, like because I can't do that. My dream four ball, Navratilova, 100%. Just psychotic, coming in cross court, diving everywhere, crossing on when the dingles is called crossing. 100% number 1 draft pick, Navratilova, in this situation. Serena, because as Navratilova's crossing, Serena's just taking pot shots across the middle. We play, if you get pegged, it's worth 2 points. So Serena, just blood in the water. I like the Jabeur call because, the drop shots, everything else. Got to put Steffi in there. Like, I need to see that someone trying to create something off of that cut backhand. I'm not sure where you go if you're in a cross-court rally and she can just settle in for a while. I'm not exactly sure what you do. So I think off the top of my head, and I'll get this wrong, I had 10 seconds to think about it. Navratilova, Serena, Steffi, and I think Jabeur. I want an agent of chaos like Jabeur in there, but I'm trying to think of kind of, past players Oh gosh, Jabor. I'm sorry, Ons. I love you. Please come on the show. Justine Henin is my fourth. Navratilova, Serena, Steffi, and Enin. God, but Kim would be good too. Kim wants to come down and play. We gotta do it.
I'm
gonna chat we're gonna do maybe like a family reunion for a served. Kim needs to come down. We need to that would be a blast. I'm gonna leave her off just because I know she'll forgive me.
This poor questioner who she was expecting you to say David Foster Wallace, Millard Tydings and Teddy Roosevelt, and instead we're talking about Dingles and Justine Henin. But I like that. I like the twist. And
all right, then who would you want to have dinner with? John?
I got it. I got mine. Lin-Manuel Miranda, Nelson Mandela, Ricky Gervais. Thank you. That's my other one to answer the original question. Go. Alcaraz, Fed, Prime McEnroe, Andre.
For male Dingles.
Male Dingles. Yeah, you got the Fed Alcaraz thing, Mac,
Dingles.
And then you have Andre just taking pot shots with three guys in position, just ripping. I mean, Andre used to play a game where Davis Cup basically, where if you, and I adopted this and paid it forward, where if you weren't top 100 and you came up to take volleys and warm up, he basically just tried to hit you. And talk about creating speed off of the short bounce. And I wore more than I should have, but I'd need to see that. God, that's a fun question. I could spend an hour just on potential Dingles matchups.
So then if you were to insert yourself though, who would you want to play with and who would you have the most fun playing against?
I'd want to play against Andre just because the amount of shit talk would be endlessly entertaining. I'd want to play against Mac. Oh, you know who else is going to be in? You know who else I need in this matchup? Rafa. Oh man, that ball flight, like the off the feed, just creating that speed. All right, I want to play with Rafa against Fed and Andre. That's what I want. Because I just want to be on the side of the court one time when someone can access Roger's backhand up and away just one time and see how that changes. That changes everything. That's a fun question. I could do that for hours, but listen, we got there eventually. My notes is a full pad of paper with potential matchups, which is fun anyways. What do we got, producer Mike?
That was great, guys. I think we made it through our first chunk. We don't need to dive through, but there's one question left, and I think this is for Andy, and we get this question, I think, every episode. And this one comes from Dunstan, but I feel like it could come from half of our fans. What is a chucker exactly?
Anyone who's not like the greatest of all time. Like, basically you get, it's the golfer who's a 4 handicap that thinks that they're just a couple things away from being on tour. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. Like every club has 3 golfers where like they're a 3 handicap. And they're like, well, if I could just get 10 more yards, then you would be a 3.7 handicap. So I'm a chucker. It's all based on comparison, right? If we're talking about Rafa, Roger, whoever, then I enter chucker conversation. Neighborhood Dingles game, not a chucker. Match me up against producer Mike.
Yeah, that's a low bar.
But a chucker is basically us mortals and us normies, depending on who the conversation is. It's basically just to establish a difference between I'm inviting you all and pulling you all in with me, because if I'm a chucker, then you're certainly chuckers. But if we're talking about the greats of all time, I need to differentiate between having played Grand Slam finals and having won 22 of them. There's a distinct difference, of which I understand some parts of it, but we'll never understand other parts of it. Therefore, I am the chucker in that conversation. But local Dingles games or, pickleball with my neighbor Fred, not in that chucker conversation. That's it. Just to differentiate levels a little bit.
There's a chucker adjacent. Are we going to get through this whole episode without referencing somebody's head first slide?
Just you wait, John.
Oh, really?
Just you wait, John. So what John is referencing, fans, is that Andy and his wife had posted on Brooke's social media that they were talking about head first slides. I'll let Andy kind of give you a little backstory to that, but you can see it on. And so Brooke went out to attempt a head first slide, and I believe Techie Sean has got got it queued up. John, can you cue that up for us?
How do you, so you finished. Was it as easy as you thought it was?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, great.
This is literally the song I asked for with Brooke. I told her that we had to play to this song.
But that was your wedding song.
Look at this. I mean, she is face first, dives way too late. The wrist, I don't know how she didn't break a wrist. She went full like back bend, legs almost overhead.
Scorpion.
Full scorpion. And
Yeah.
when I said this, I mean, oh my God.
Dude.
I mean, Andy's face in that video is fear. There was fear in that face. You're really worried about her health at first, I feel like.
She's in the middle of production right now. She needs teeth. Like she's shooting a show right now. She needs teeth. So anyways, my wife and I are literally in school pickup for our third grader and our first grader. And we're walking in and I don't know. I think we were talking about our son Hank's baseball game. Like this is 9-year-old baseball. It's his first year. So basically it's the type of baseball where if you have a good pitcher and a good catcher, you're unbeatable. And 90% of the runs are because they throw it over the catcher's head and everyone just steals bases until there are no bases left to steal. And so Brooke was like, I could head for a slide. I mean, head slide. I'm like, you've never done it before. She's like, oh, no, I mean, if I just think about it, athletically, she goes, athletically, if I just think about it, I can do it. I'm like,
no.
I go, how do you have more confidence in your athletic ability than I ever had in my entire life? Anyway, so then it got the thing and she's like, she videos like the last part of the conversation. And she's like, should I post it? And I'm like, yeah, you should post it. Because if you post it, we're going to have to go do it. Anyways, so you'll see the video. We'll put it up. We'll do the full thing. But she literally starts her slide like 18 inches before the bag and then ends up with her teeth on the bag. Like it is, she does it. I'm like, oh no. There was a moment where I thought she was going to look up and
slip.
It looked like a hockey player.
Like, did you coach her at all beforehand? Did she watch any videos or even
she watched
run towards it first and back off? Like
literally 2 nights ago, and my in-laws live, we share like a covered porch separates our two houses and our kids running back and forth all day. But I walk in on Brooke and her dad. Her dad is basically going through Pete Rose's greatest head first slides. As if
that's not a good one to go for.
As if that's the comp. Like
that is not a good one to go for.
I'm like, oh, did you already cover Ricky Henderson? Like, wait. Anyway, so and then I started off as you could tell that she was getting she was committed. We both just love shenanigans, love shit. This is like a dream for us. Like it's fun. It's just endlessly fun. But Mike, I watched my wife of 15 years doing practice dives on our living room carpet. But when you talked about her wrists, she comes out to do this slide. She's like, I have 4 sweatshirts on. I'm like, what does that do? Besides make it like less likely to slide. Knee pads, wrist guards, like roller. She goes into our son's rollerblading bag and takes out wrist guards. She's wearing a batting helmet. It was a mess.
It was a mess.
But
what'd you think about it, John? Have you seen worse slides than that?
I really respect the effort. Didn't that happen the exact same night that Ohtani like almost dislocated his shoulder sliding? If like the MVP of the National League MVP is going on the disabled list for a bad slide, what hope is there for the rest of us? But I appreciate and I respect the commitment to the bit.
Honestly, if I could have replaced my psyche throughout my career with her confidence in the moment where she said, I can do a head first slide, I'd have 3 Wimbledon titles. No doubt. No doubt. Anyways, we love shenanigans. I cannot wait to see that video on loop over and over and over. Share it with all of your friends, please. Fantastic stuff.
Don't worry. We'll play out the show with it. Don't worry.
It's so funny because the song that you put over it was the song. I'm like, Brooke, I hope we have to get this song and put it over it somehow, some way. She will not listen to this, but I will make sure she sees this.
It'll get posted.
Anyways, this has been served. JW, thanks, man. I know you were traveling this morning. Thanks for jumping on. Producer Mike, Techie Sean, Social Sophie recap next week. I'm going to insert this into the show. Went to the T-Swizz concert last night.
I was there. I was there this past weekend.
First time you saw it? Remind me.
Yeah, first time.
And thoughts?
Sabrina Carpenter came out. It was
Thoughts?
ridiculous.
Tell me about it.
It was awesome. We had a great time. I mean, we saw it. Big group of friends. Great venue to see it. Mercedes Superdome or it's now the Caesar Superdome, which I didn't know that. So sorry about that. But incredible performer. I mean, when you think about her performing for 3 hours, you're like, oh, it's great. She was running like 75 yards, like back and forth. I mean, it's not a small stage. I mean,
and she's not in running shoes.
No.
Anyways, there's something cool about seeing a pop star in their prime. Yeah. And I don't know that there's ever been there hasn't ever been a bigger tour. So anyways, we'll get Social Sophie. We'll get her to come on and give the full breakdown next week. This has been served. We cover all things. We cover Perricard. We cover Wilson stuff. We cover Serena's process. We cover carpet courts. Taylor Swift head first slides.
Boom.
Complete. This is served. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, all the stuff.
Roll that B-roll, Sean.